Hello, fellas and ladies. We're back, still doing TIFF. A lot more TIFF. I'm not even close to being done. But if you want to see everything I saw ASAP, it's on the Bite Size Breakdown website. And if you haven't followed them on Twitter or check out the website all the times that you want, you're being a stupid person for not fucking doing that. But next up on the coverage is going to be The End, the feature debut from Joshua Oppenheimer, who directed the probably generally considered the greatest documentary of our times, The Act of Killing. And this is a golden era style musical about a family in a salt mine bunker after the world has essentially ended, and we slowly found out that this powerful, wealthy family is basically directly behind the end of times. So I was really looking forward to this movie. I'm a huge fan of Joshua Oppenheimer's film, The Act of Killing. I haven't seen The Look of Silence, but I really want to. And just by concept alone, I was really intrigued by what this movie was, so suffice to say, I'm very fucking disappointed by this movie. That's not to say this movie's terrible, it's definitely not. There's a lot I admired about it, but just generally speaking, this movie's laborious and cold, distant tone did not work. I can talk about what I liked first, because I did like the general premise and concept. I admire how they never directly tell you, oh, by the way, the world is over. They just leave little clues for you to, like, kind of decipher it. From a concept standpoint, this movie never tells you anything, and we never actually leave this bunker. The closest we get is we just kind of going around the salt mines, which I think looked all pretty terrific. I don't think Joshua Oppenheimer really did that much that was very cinematic about this movie, but overall, I think what he was trying to do in terms of shooting this film, I think he was very successful. I didn't mind how insulated it looked. I kind of liked how it was a little bit low-key despite how somewhat wacky it all is. I don't think this movie fully committed to wackiness, but I admire the very secluded approach that this took, even if I don't think it was flawless. I think all in all, the ensemble is fantastic. Tilda Swinton is far and away the best in show. Just everything about her delivery, her mannerisms just is this very distant, like, kind of nothingness in her eyes. This is a woman who almost feels no remorse for what she's done, I guess. Same thing kind of go for Michael Shannon. Michael Shannon's always good. I just love Michael Shannon. I feel like he just has a great sense of humor about himself that he always uses to his advantage in his performances, and this is no exception. George Mackay was also excellent. He was a fantastic lead. I did kind of get confused how old he was supposed to be, but I do think that was kind of intentional, because obviously we know he's, like, grown up in this, like, he's only knows this world that doesn't exist anymore. So I kind of admire what George Mackay did. He had, like, an innocence to him. He is the only one here who has kind of an arc, and he just demonstrated that wonderfully. Also, massive shout out, because she won't get enough credit, but massive shout out to Brana Gallagher, who I actually thought was a really big standout in the film. Moses Ingram was good. I don't really remember anything that really stood out to me, if I'm being completely honest, but I don't, she was good. And I admired the music. I don't think, if you're looking for a grand musical with, like, big numbers, you're not going to get that here. And quite frankly, in the moment, I remember tapping my toes, even if I don't remember the music very well. For better or worse, a lot of the musical numbers are just them walking around, and we don't really, it's just most of them just singing their feelings. In some cases, I don't mind that. In fact, there are when the movie does get dancey, I think that was definitely the most standoutish musical numbers. There's one with George Mackay on a pile of salt, and I actually, that was probably my favorite musical number of the whole movie. Michael Shannon also has a really flashy one that I really, really liked. But all in all, just this movie just felt too distant and too long to feel what it was trying to go for. The pacing in this movie is way too slow to say the same thing constantly. This movie is very clearly a very anti-establishment, not necessarily an eat the rich movie. I feel like that's a little bit of an oversimplified way of describing the film. I wouldn't call it eat the rich, but it's definitely anti-powerful people and how they, they just kind of close off themselves to the world and just constantly justify their actions. One example is this is George Mackay kind of writing a book for his dad, played by Michael Shannon. He's constantly, and it's just basically a fluff piece. A good idea, however, they kind of don't go anywhere with that. It's just, here is what he's doing, that's it. Which, I don't mind that the movie does not that much going on in his head. It probably is it's 2.5 hours, and we're just kind of going in circles with each of these characters. George Mackay is the only person who kind of has something going on with Moses Ingram. And I kind of like where it landed and how it lands with the plot of the movie. But again, it's just like, okay, but do we have to watch it for 2.5 hours? Especially with some pacing is so, like, again, I can do slow. Like, I fucking love Power of the Dog. I fuck with The Zone of Interest. I fuck with Roma. I can do slow. But you gotta do slow with a purpose, and this wasn't slow with any purpose other than padding the runtime for no reason to be longer than it needed to be. It was also way too distant from the audience. It's such a cold movie, which, again, usually I don't mind. Problem is, with this film, it was just kind of cold for the sake of being cold. And it kind of lessened the effect of the movie for me. Like, I got the message, but it didn't stick with me because I just didn't have any emotional connection to anybody in this movie. And for the record, I think that was intentional. I think you were supposed to feel a distance. I just think that was a bad call. I do kind of wish that Joshua Oppenheimer doubled down on the concept, but he kind of just stuck with one idea and ran with it. Like, the bunker that we're in permeates in your brain, and yet they don't really have that much else going for it in terms of, like, memorability. It's not that much flair going on with this movie. There's not a lot of crazy wackiness they could have doubled down on that they just didn't. They kind of put it in front of our faces to tease us, and then they kind of just go back to a central thesis that that Joshua Oppenheimer didn't really feel like expanding on. So suffice to say, my high expectations were very much not met in ways that I was really disappointed by. While there is something to admire about the end in terms of its concept and originality, and of course its ensemble, I just kind of felt too at a distance from this movie to feel anything. I would like to see Joshua Oppenheimer take another jab at directing a feature that isn't a documentary. However, in this case, I just think he didn't have enough ideas going for him to fully stick the landing. So it's with great sadness that I have to give the end 5 tildes out of 10. Alright, that is that. Like, subscribe, and share, or I'm gonna destroy the world for my own ambitions. You don't know I'm powerful and rich like that. You don't know.